Good morning. So, today's class the topic is change management and organizational stress, which automatically implies that when you have change, you have stress. Why is that? Because we have discussed earlier in our classes that the human being per se is uncomfortable, all right, with uncertainty, all right, and they are very comfortable with things which they have done before, things which they are used to doing, all right. That means things which are stable. So, anything which is unstable, all right, they are uncomfortable with. Discomfort is caused, and when you have change, what is happening? The stability is being disturbed. You are having disequilibrium. Therefore, human beings feel uncomfortable with change. So, the unfortunate part of it is in life, if there is anything constant, they say, what is that? Change. Change is constant, and all of us, we feel uncomfortable with change. So, how do you resolve this? Well, in your own lives, you have to resolve it by many means, and organizations also. We have to attempt to see that we manage this change. It has to be managed, okay? Because people will try to resist change, remember that, and we as managers have to see that for the good of the organization as well as for the good of all the stakeholders, including the employees themselves. We have to see that change occurs in the desirable direction. Any questions? Right. So, we can say that change can be a radical type of change, an incremental type of change. You can also say that change can be planned or unplanned. Can anyone give me an example of what is a radical change in an organization? Radical means something out of the ordinary, extraordinary, something that does not happen every day, some change. ERP introduced in the industry. Now, that might be, he says, a radical change. Introduction of a system. Everyone knows what is ERP? Tell me what is ERP. Loudly. Enterprise resource planning. So, radical change. Example. So, we say that it might be ERP introduction is a radical change. Does everyone agree with this? How would you define a radical change? I think one of the definitions acceptable would be any different ways of working, all right, which is of a order of difference to the earlier way of working, quite different, all right, or anything, any force which impacts the organization in a way which is very intense. That can also be a definition of change. So, would this ERP introduction fit into that? Does it radically change the way of working? Yeah, what happens? What is a radical change? Say you as an employee and I as managing director, I introduce ERP system and I give a circular for the notice of all employees with effect or for immediate effect, all will follow ERP system. How does it affect you as an employee? You have to be trained first. Now, when you are trained, you are being prepared, isn't it? But again coming back, does it really affect you radically as an employee, or does it affect the organization radically? Well, this, yes, it affects the organization radically. You see, the point is the intensity.
Actually, we have to work more on computers.
You have to work more on computers. What does ERP really give you? What is that ability it gives an organization?
Actually, it's a kind of software which combines all the data like marketing, production. Marketing person knows.
Quite right. It's an integrative kind of software. See, all the activities which are going on in the business, all right, in any of the functions, it integrates. So, at the press of a button or the click of a mouse, you can get all sorts of information at your command. So, it helps you in decision making essentially. So, it is a decision support system. So, you can take hopefully better decisions, therefore, you can have better performance of the organization, because it is very quick and it gives you a lot of very accurate data which is not standalone data, but integrated data. For instance, if you have the increase in the production schedule, it can give you immediately what materials are required, in what quantities, who are the suppliers who will supply, what sort of deliveries, all this information can come. So, if a client asks you that I want an increase of 50%, you are in a position to say very quickly and very accurately how much time extra it will take you to supply it, which you could not do without these information technology aids. I call it aids. They are enablers, they are not substitutes for running your business. You still have to take a decision based on data and based on your evaluative judgment, your managerial judgment, but it supports a decision. Okay. So, give me another example. We are a little undecided about this, whether ERP is a radical change or not. Give me a real radical example.
Change in business modernization.
Modernization. Would it be radical? Let us write it down. How do you go about modernization? Say you change machines, you automate.
Take the case of any steel plant.
Steel plant.
Suppose you take the case of steel melting shop.
Okay.
So earlier it was almost doing manually.
Right.
It may be something like automatic.
Right.
In a plant manual.
But would it be a kind of incremental change or would it be radical, which happens suddenly? It may be incremental. You will make a plan of what equipment and what methods and what ways of working will change, training will go on, orders will be placed, equipment will be replaced and so on.
Sir, another example would be like Tata produced the Telco and Tata produced the Indica.
Indica car is produced by Tata Motor Company, yes. So,
It is a
radical change as against what?
previously they were producing the heavy
Trucks and commercial vehicles. Now you are saying they produce passenger cars. So, is it a radical change? Anyway, see, suffice it to say that change, there are certain examples you see here. One is takeover stroke merger. Sometimes what happens, we employees in the organization, we may not even know what negotiations are going on. You may hear only a few rumors and suddenly it is announced that your company is taken over by another company. And why is it being called a radical change? Because the lives of the employees may be radically affected. What is the radical effect in your life? That you lose your job suddenly. Isn't that a radical effect? It affects your entire family, it affects you, and it may be a direct or an indirect consequence of a takeover of your company. So, they are calling it huge losses suddenly. You think that your company is doing well as an employee because they have been making reasonable profits, and suddenly 1 year the results are published and there is a massive loss. And if there is a massive loss, again what happens? You think of the consequences of that. Then certain restructuring may happen, certain steps may be taken, some decisions taken which will affect your lives very radically and also the life of that organization. New CEO is a radical change. Why? Because the new CEO may bring with him or her ideas which are totally different, maybe opposite, about how to run this organization, what products to manufacture, what markets to go into, what technology to use in manufacture of the product, whether to manufacture at all or exit this manufacturing business, go into trading business. So, these are decisions which will very radically, that is with great intensity, it will change the organization and the people who are employees and also other stakeholders in the organization. So, it may be radical. Loss of top management team, what happens? It has happened in the past. They are traveling in aeroplane, it crashes. The CEO with the entire vice president's team who may be traveling, they are no more suddenly. That means you have no leadership left in the company. That is a very radical change. Okay? That is why in many of the companies, big companies, they have formalized rules and procedures that not more than say 2 people of so and so rank will take the same flight. They have these rules. And what is here, you see, it is infrequent. Radical is something which does not happen very frequently. By the very word, radical, all right, is something which is of great intensity. So, every day you do not have episodes or happenings or decisions of great intensity which are taken. But plan change happens with relatively more frequent periodicity, does not it? Plan change. So, one of the plan changes is to bridge the performance gap. Constantly in the process of managing a company, what are managers doing? They are setting targets, okay? They are getting information to see how they are performing against the targets, and then if there is a variance, they try to take actions to see that this variance does not happen. That is bridging performance gap. Similarly, unplanned is sudden and unforeseen. Yeah. Any questions? So, we have talked of radical and we have talked of incremental, planned and unplanned. Incremental, as I said, is increase in competition, new product launch, a new plant is built, a new factory, retirement of the head, because retirement is planned. We know when the head is retiring, isn't it? We know the retirement age. So, you can plan for it, plan for a new person to come in. And as we said earlier, these are very frequent. Because why? Because it is part of the normal life of the organization, normal management of the company. So, any questions at this stage? Now, let me ask you, who are these people who bring in these plan changes? Let us come to planned, because unplanned we do not know, but planned we know, we plan changes. Controlling authority, so management. So, that we are all clear. Who brings in? Who brings in the change? What change? Planned change. So, we say management. Clear. And why does management bring in change? For betterment. And why do they think that it is for betterment?
Change is synonymous with time.
Yes. Change is synonymous with time. So, technology changes. So, let us say, why would a management want to change? He says, because of technology is changing. So, what? I say technology, let it change. अपना क्या है उसमें? Let it change. You have to go with the times. Why? You say, look, you are a maverick. I say, I do not want to go with the time.
You have to compete with others.
Compete, correct. Because your mission is to make profits. If you are a profit maker, you have to compete. And if this technology which you do not adopt, your competitors adopt it, obviously they are going to make probably products faster, at a lower cost, better quality, and no one will buy your product. So, it affects you vitally. That is why willy nilly, whether you like it or not, who is driving management to make the change? The competition. Okay. Shall we say driver of change, is environmental forces, correct? And in our case, mainly environmental forces is basically the business environment, right? It may also be the political environment, the economic environment, but essentially the business environment, okay? And it is usually, as we said, the senior person who drives the change, but let us have a look here. There are cases when the management decides that they will have what we call as a leader, change leader or a change agent, and they decide to bring the change agent from outside the organization. Why do you think they do that? Maybe with new ideas, maybe because of the expert power, maybe they bring a consultant who has done change management for a number of companies, whereas our own management is not that experienced, not so knowledgeable. So, maybe one reason, yes. Any other reason? Why from outside? Because another thing is there, they may have expert power in the domain general of change, but do they have expert power about our company? No, we have more knowledge about our own company, our own operations, isn't it? So, I may argue and say they have less knowledge. They are going to change our company, but we know more about our company than them. All right, it has to be a joint effort. Okay. But again, let us get back to any other reason why we bring in outside expert. One is lack of knowledge, all right, fine. So, we take help. Any other reason? See, there are times we are talking of organization behavior, we are talking of human beings. Often it is more saleable, shall we say, easier to convince your own employees that the change is good for you if some outside expert comes and tells you. Like a child, in school, if the teacher says anything, teacher has a great influence on the child. If the teacher has taught something which is wrong, a spelling or a pronunciation, and the parents try to correct, they will say, no mummy, teacher said so. They have a great influence. So, because they feel the teacher is an expert. Mummy is not an expert. She is mummy, she is not an expert. She is mother, in the house. Does this happen? Whatever teacher says, so it is very important to have teachers in primary schools particularly who are fairly knowledgeable and good people, who do not teach, wrong things, because it is very difficult then to have the children unlearn whatever wrong things they have learned. So, by that same logic, often employees in organizations, they think that even if you have experts, all right, in this domain knowledge, if you bring from outside, they think it is better. Often you have even in our own, we read in newspapers, someone is bringing some big name, worldwide consultant to do this. It may be possible that there are local consultants who are equally good, who have worked in the same organizations earlier on, but they do not have that confidence and credibility. So, this is another important reason why you bring in outside consultant. Very often, remember, when you are going to make a change like a restructuring, departments are being closed down, people are being redeployed, you are in a powerful position, let us say as a department head, that department is closed. What happens to you? You lose your power, no? You have to be transferred to some other department. Maybe you are told to build a new department. So, you had so many people under you, so many managers, now you have one secretary and one assistant, and you have to start again fresh, prove yourself. So, all these are changes, all right, which you find difficult to accept if it is done internally. If it is outside, it makes it little easier for the management. This is the experience. So, that is another powerful reason why sometimes you choose change agent from outside because of the salability and marketability of the change scheme or the change plan. So, they lead and support the change, take responsibility and have commitment for accomplishing the change. This is what the change leader or the change agents do. The change leader may be an individual or a group, often in large companies which is multi-divisional, multi-product. In many geographical locations, you make a committee of senior managers, and you say that they are going to lead this change. And they may be representatives, senior representatives from big divisions of the company. And then their domain will be that in your division you bring in this change. This is a total change we are agreeing. So, each one will do it for their division and they will coordinate as a committee. Will assure a leadership role in this task. What does this mean? It means that you announce a change, you start a change, but someone will have to take responsibility, accountability. Without that, it may not be very successful, the change, because when you are going through a change process, what is happening? You are taking certain actions and you have to constantly monitor it, review it, see that you are achieving the results of change which you have planned. And if you are not achieving it, then you have to take steps to see that things are corrected. All this implies there has to be a leader who is held accountable by the management, so that if it does not happen, the change, all right, then some other changes can be brought in, he can be replaced. So, just like you have got functions of marketing, production, finance who have clear cut responsibilities, when you start a change management effort in a company, you have to make someone responsible for it, otherwise it will not happen. I mean, that is logical, is it not? Any questions? Okay. So, we will assure a leadership role in this task. Planned change process. Now, this is a concept here. The concept says you first do unfreezing, then you do changing, whatever change you have planned, and then you do refreezing. What does this mean? It is a concept. Freezing is, you want to freeze, make ice cream, is not it? So, you put the ingredients, milk and sugar and other, if you some fruits to be put, then you put it in the refrigerator and it freezes. So, freezing conceptually means what? That it is set, you cannot change it. So, when you are talking of change management, you are changing an existing set of rules, regulations, procedures, ways of working. So, conceptually it is something set, because people are doing it all the time. If you want to change it, what this is saying is, first you have to unset it, tell people whatever you are doing you cannot do any more. So, that is the process of unlearning or unfreezing, and then you do the change, because if you do not first unfreeze, the change will be like water off a duck's back. People will listen, but they will not do it. Conceptually, after making the change, you refreeze it, which means you institutionalize it. Because if you freeze again after putting in change methods of working, change departments and so on, then once again people will start using it and not relapse or fall back into the old systems of working. All right? Okay. So, this is a conceptual framework. Now, plan change strategies. Look at the first one, coercion. What do you understand by coercion? Threat, use of force. Do you think that is good? No? Then why does it say one of the strategies is threat? When do you have to use threat? When you No, when you have power, you need not use threat.
Somebody is not working well.
When somebody is not doing what you want him to do or want her to do, you use threat. When you are bringing up a child, don't you use threat at times? Is it bad? Now, you just now said it is bad. Now you are saying no. Sometimes, yes. So that is the answer. There are times when threat is one of the weapons that you have in your armory, and you have to use that threat judiciously to bring in what you desire to be done by the other person, the child or the workman or groups of people and so on. So that's why they say one of the strategies is not only threats but rewards also. So reinforcement, as we learned, isn't it? So rewards, punishment, but the underlying principle is coercion. You do this, then you are rewarded. If you don't do it, you are punished. Then we have rational persuasion. That is facts, information, reasoned arguments. What is that rational persuasion? Anybody? What do you mean by rational persuasion?
We have to motivate them by.
Right. Exactly. You try to motivate them. So, it is the opposite of the coercion. You appeal to them as rational, reasonable human beings, and you give reasons to them to say, look, we are bringing in change not because it is a whim and fancy, not because it is an arbitrary thing, but there are powerful reasons why we have to bring in the change. We know that the change may be painful to some of you, all right, but still for the larger good, in the interests of the stakeholders of the company, for you as employees, we have to do it. Otherwise, the company will suffer grievously. So, these are arguments, reasons, persuasion that you do to motivate people to conform to the views of the management and thereby give some cooperation and not resist the change, because resistance can be done in many ways, isn't it, when human beings are concerned. You can do it overtly, you can do it covertly also. Don't people sometimes say, yes sir, we will do it, having no intention to do it? It happens. So, there is covert resistance. Okay? Then there is a third one, that is shared power. Participatory style, emphasis on common values. Now, if you are a manager and some changes have to come in the department, how do you go about it? If you take this strategy, shared power? Involve, you call people and say, look, we have a problem. Now, all of us are affected by this problem. So, I think it is only right that all of us take a decision jointly. So, you start by doing that. That means, what are you saying? I am the boss here, but look, I am not taking this decision on my own, because you people are also involved. So, I think it is fair and just, let us all analyze this problem and see what is better. What are you doing? Sharing your power in a participative way. And why is it one of the strategies? Because it is easier to overcome resistance. One thing we know, any change coming, people will resist. So, these are strategies to see that it is easier to bring in change. Any questions? Say you take that style and people do not participate, then does not it happen often? Boss will start, keep on talking and say, any suggestion, any question, everyone sits with wooden faces. Then what do? You have to change your strategy, isn't it? Okay. Here you see emphasis on common values. That is the gist of your argument when you try to participate. We said, and we all accepted, that resistance to change is always there, and here are some of the reasons which have been noted down here. One is fear of the unknown. Anything which is unknown, we are normally frightened, except maybe a few exceptional people, all right, like explorers of the past. They want to go into uncharted regions, but even those explorers, they have some amount of fear of the unknown. Lack of good information. Why do we say that? Often in organizations, you get rumors, you don't get authentic information, and the rumors may not necessarily be right, they may be wrong, or you don't have any information. The management style of that organization is such, they don't share any information with the employees. Now, when you don't know, you get frightened. Yes or not? Say you are sleeping at night in your house, suddenly you wake up, look at the watch, it is 2 a.m. You don't know why you woke up. Suddenly you hear some noise somewhere in the house. Okay. What do you feel? Discomfort? No, because you are thinking, what is that noise? Is it that some burglar has come? Some intruder is trying to get into the house, or there are some rats, etc., which may be in the kitchen. So, what is happening then? Lack of good information, you don't have that information. So, you get up, you go, you try to investigate. Then you find a mouse scurrying away, then you have the information, there are rodents in the house. So, you feel at ease. So, employees also, you have to communicate as management, particularly to squash rumors, you have to give information to them. So, even if the information is not so good, it is better than not giving information most of the times. Then fear for loss of security, no reasons to change. No reasons to change again. If the employees by and large feel that the company is doing well, good profits, good dividend, increments have come, and now you are asking that you must change, transfer, go for training, you see no reason. And all these happen, managements forget to do these things, inform. Fear for loss of power. That example I gave, you are a manager of a big department, and suddenly that department is getting closed down because there is a product audit. They say this product has to be closed down because it is not giving much profits, all right. In fact, it is giving losses. So, other products are giving profit. We have to encourage the other product divisions to retrain people, the resources we have to transfer and so on. Fear of loss of power, lack of resources, bad timing. Bad timing is this example I gave. Company is doing very well, you want to bring in lot of changes. Timing may not be right. However, say we said there was a radical change, sudden loss, big loss of the company. Do you think that is a good time to bring in change? No? Yes, people have powerful reasons. They say, "Arey baapre, this loss is there. If it happens 2-3 years, they will close down this company. We lose our job." So then we say, "All right, we are shifting the head office from downtown to suburbs." You know, you will have great hardship. Traveling time will be 1.5 hours going, coming back. It will cost you more if you are in Bombay. Railway pass will cost you more, and so on. But there is big loss. So, if management says, then employees will discuss amongst each other and say, "Yeah, maybe we should not resist this. For our own good, let the head office be shifted." Because company says we will sell the head office. We can get so many crores for it. It will tide over our loss situation for the time being. Also, it is too expensive, or we will lease it out and earn money from that, and it is much cheaper. So, these are the kind of actual decisions which happen when there is a sudden loss. So, that timing is a good timing to bring in change. So, wise management may seize that opportunity and say, now let us bring in changes which otherwise would have been resisted and we would not have been able to carry out. Now we can carry out. Employees are more receptive to change. Then habit. Habit, you don't change. Say you have a habit, all right, of taking bath in the morning. Okay, it's difficult for you to change the habit. You will always take bath in the morning. Habit you have of sitting in that chair every day. No particular reason, just a habit. It's difficult to change the habit. Huh? Is it not? For if for nothing else, simply because human being is a creature of habit, we don't like to change. We resist the change. And unwillingness to learn. There are some people who are
Exactly, loss of security.
loss of security. Tell me what happens. Why loss of security? What does that mean? Anyone will tell me?
Talking about job security.
Yes, job security. Then other kinds of security, if you are transferred, for instance, you are secure in some knowledge. Say you have been doing some work. Now your work changes. You feel insecure because you have to learn something new. Say you are unable to master it. Then you will not be working as well as you were working in your previous job. So your ratings will be lower ratings, your promotional chances. So security of your ability to do work, you feel insecure. But job security is the most powerful thing. Okay? So you have all these reasons why people will resist, but you have to manage. So overcoming and managing resistance. Communication and education. Why the need is there for the change? What is the logic for bringing in the change? Participation and involvement. Taking other people's ideas. And facilitation and support. Assistance to affected people. What does that mean?
So in that sense, one part may be affected drastically, so you satisfy them in a different way.
Right, help them. This example of shifting the head office, maybe there are 800 people in that head office. Now you are shifting it to distant suburbs. It will cost them more. Time you cannot give back to them, but at least you can give them a small allowance. That we give you allowance, hardship allowance, say 100 rupees, 200 rupees a month, which may not neutralize the total increase of your transportation cost, but it will assist you. So this is the kind of help and support you can give. Okay? Yeah, that's right. Because finally, when you are bringing in change which are affecting people, you have to use a number of ways in which to get it to be accepted by the people. Finally, you have to bring in the change as a manager, right? So facilitation and support of the affected people. And negotiation and agreement. Finally, whenever you are successfully bringing change, you have unfrozen, you want to change, and then you have to freeze it, as we said, isn't it? How do you freeze and institutionalize? Agreement. Unless you have agreement, all the loose ends are not tied. It is open. It's an open issue. You have not achieved anything. And negotiation per se means what? It means incentives and trade-offs. Did we do this topic? Conflicts and negotiations. So we said negotiation and bargaining is the same thing. Bargaining means trade-off. I give something to you which you value. In return, you give something to me which I value. So we trade with each other. We trade off. Right? And what sort of bargaining did we talk about when we did that topic? We said there are two types broadly of bargaining. Anyone remember? Yes? Yes, win-win and win-loss. So we said that there is something called distributive bargaining, isn't it? Where I win, you lose, or you win, I lose. And there is integrative. Integrative type, we both win. So when you do negotiation and agreement, you have to give incentives and trade-offs so that hopefully you strike a win-win kind of a situation. So at the end of it, both parties affected, management as well as the employees, they have a feeling that something good has happened ultimately. Okay? Any questions? Right. manipulation and cooperation. Covert attempts to influence or buy-offs. What does that mean? When we talked of manipulation, all right, we talked of Machiavellian. What does that mean? When do you manipulate? You remember we discussed the Machiavellian principle. And yeah, but what? Yes, there is a personality type. We say high Mac personality. They believe in it. But Machiavellian, the very term means that there is not absolute honesty. Manipulation. Manipulation is what? Deceit, something which is not correct, you are making people to understand that that is correct. So, it is a bit of a fraud, isn't it? Fraud, deceit, coupled with fear. So, that is manipulation. Now, it is very bad or very good? Without casting any judgment, sometimes when you have change, you have to manipulate. Force, authority, punishment is coercion, and manipulation is covert attempts. Covert means hidden attempts to influence or buy off. Sometimes you have the employees who are unionized and they have the leaders, the internal union as well as the outside union. Some managements may try to do covert attempts, talk not openly, but talk secretly to the leaders, saying, look, we want this change. Now, how do we bring it? You tell us. You help us, we help you. These are covert methods. And you help us means it is your job then to convince your workers or your constituents, they are my workers of course, but your constituents that this is good for them. Because if you say it, they will believe it. If management says it, they may not believe. So, you make these covert efforts. And then you have explicit and implicit coercion, force and authority, which we said in the beginning. You can never ever get away. You know, as an idealist, you may feel is very bad, you should not do force, but in the real world, force is sometimes necessary. Even for your near and dear ones, even for your children, no? We say some discipline should be built into the upbringing. Spare the rod and spoil the child. Have you heard that term? No? It means that sometimes you may have to give a slap to the child also, punish by slapping, because otherwise this discipline will not be built in. So, coercion is a part of life, you have to use it at times. Okay. So, we have then a concept of organization development. Development of the organization. Change management is very much a part and parcel of efforts to develop organizations. Why? Because organization development is a holistic effort to have change, total change in the organization. We did the topic of total quality management. If you remember, we said it is holistic effort to change the attitudes, ways of working, all right, of the entire organization. That is the effort in organization development, we said. So, organization development, all right, involves change, and change management therefore is a subset of organization development. And organization development, we said, is attitude change. So, if you want to use this organizational development method, you have to hold certain values yourself as a management, otherwise you can't do it, because organization development based on humanistic values, which are positive beliefs about the desire and the potential for growth amongst employees. We also covered a topic where we tried to discuss what is the difference between personnel management, which was the earlier concept, and the human resource management. You remember? And we discussed certain things. That is what organization development is about. This is the whole movement and philosophy, where we are going away from looking at groups and constituencies like material, labor. We are looking at them now as individual human beings. So, that is essentially the humanistic approach. OD believes that the best climate for such growth is the one which stresses collaboration, open communication, interpersonal trust, shared power and constructive confrontation. What is constructive confrontation? Confrontation means people, they fight with each other, isn't it? What is this constructive confrontation? Having positive. Give me an example. Give me an example. You must have done it so many times in your lives. Arguing with others. Where is the constructive element in it? You are confronting, no doubt. That means arguing. What is constructive then and what is destructive confrontation? Constructive confrontation is where your attitude and your intention is basically to solve a problem, whereas destructive is not to solve a problem, but to hurt someone, to teach him a lesson, not to solve the problem. So, one is problem based, the other is person based. That is the basic difference. So, as good managers, we always have to avoid, as human beings, we cannot avoid getting angry at people, impatient at people. We are human beings, these are human traits, frailties. But as managers, as professionals, when we get angry, for instance, we have to blow a whistle and say, wait a minute, don't get angry, because that is, you are getting angry at a person. Try and solve the problem. Focus your attention on the problem, then you can deal with the person and solve the problem. So, that is constructive confrontation. Because it is a humanistic philosophy, therefore, for organization development, there are certain assumptions, and so far as individuals are concerned, the assumptions are people want to grow and mature. Assumption is not that people are lazy, they will not work unless you supervise them and force them to work. That can also be another assumption. There are individuals who believe that. We have done that before as a topic. You see the now interconnection between human behavior and human resource management. We said there are some people, whose personality type, is what we call theory X and theory Y. Theory Y belongs to this class of people. If you are trying to change management in your organization, your top chief executive, you better be sure that you have managers who are theory Y types. Otherwise, they will not be able to do it, because their core belief is that people are lazy. This is all bakwas, no point in trying all these methods of cooperation, partnership and all, nothing is going to work. So, change effort will fail. You have to have the right type of people to carry out this change. In the first place, your problems may be because you have managers who are theory X types. That may be the root of the problem. So, one of the things of change management will be what? To retire these managers. Give them a golden handshake and say, Bhaiya, you have done well, we are happy, but now zamana badal gaya. We want to work in a different manner. We do not want to stress you, because we know that you have been used to certain style of working. So, thank you very much, here is 5 lakhs of rupees check, all right, and otherwise the change management won't happen. It is a fact, it is real. Okay. Then employees have much to offer, energy, creativity, that is now not being used at work. There is a lot of potential, you have to unleash that potential of the individual employees. Most employees desire the opportunity to contribute, they want it. It is up to management to allow them to do that, make grounds for them to do that. They desire, seek and appreciate empowerment, they want to take responsibility. not that they do not want to take responsibility, but for you as a management you have to ensure that you provide them this opportunity to do it. That is what you have to do as a manager. Okay. So, now we will continue this topic in the next